Hey, what's up guys? I'm gonna show you how I made my Genderbend Mileena cosplay from scratch. This was an interesting build. I was so excited to get started on this. So first off, I cut all of my shapes that I was gonna use to build the pieces out of paper. I then placed all of my paper shapes on EVA foam and I traced them on and then I cut them out using scissors, as you can see here. I'm gonna demonstrate how I made the elbow and knee armor from scratch. I experimented with Warbler. I used my traced on paper to draw out the shape of the armor, and then I used my X-Acto blade to cut the piece out, and I used a heat gun to shape it into the kneecap and elbow armor, as you can see here. And this is what the elbow and knee armor looks like before I start painting it gold. And this is how it turned out after I painted the pieces gold. And here you see I'm putting pieces together onto the armor piece. And voila, this is how I made the kneecap and elbow armor using Warbler. So moving on, I've had all my pieces cut out. And then I used plastic dip to spray paint everything to give it a base coat before I started painting everything. Okay, next piece, I'm gonna show you how I made the thigh armor. I used a hot tool gun to draw on some of the inseams. So I used blue and white paint, and then I also mixed it with red paint to create the magenta shade that I needed for the thigh armor. I used blue and brown and black paint to create the bottom half of the thigh armor, and I hand painted both of those pieces. And voila, this is what all my pieces came out looking like after painting everything. If you look closely, you notice a pattern on the navy blue areas of the costume. So what I did was I drew the symbol on cardboard and then I cut it out. And what I did was I used silver paint to dab the pattern onto the lower part of the thigh armor. As you can see here, I'm just repeatedly doing that. And I use Mod Podge to seal the paint to give it more of a glossy look as well. And here is the part where I start putting together the thigh armor, putting both halves together. And I use the heat gun to form the shape around my leg. Now for the mask. I then glued on all the gold pieces onto the mask using super glue. And then I used my heat gun to form the mask to my face shape. For this costume, it was hard to find the right magenta spandex, so I made my own. I used a white spandex and I used pink and blue Ride Dye More to dye it to the magenta color that I needed it to be. It came out the color I needed it to be, and then I cut off all the sleeves. I'm adjusting the pockets here for my ears. And this is kind of what it's starting to look like on my body. She wears these navy blue gloves, and what I did was I decided to use spandex to create the gloves. So I created navy blue gloves and I hand painted some EVA foam pieces that I glued on to the glove. And yep, this is what it's starting to look like. And I just added a few more details to the gloves, adding some gold pins. Now for the arm sleeve, I'm going to show you how I put that together. I used a Milo container to shove the shoulder sleeve onto it to glue on the upper piece of the armor that I created to make it easier to glue on. And this is me trying it on to make sure that it fits good. And yep, it fits great. I added on the gloves with the sleeve, and that's what it looks like. Now I added a few more details onto the spandex. I glued on some shoulder armor pieces made out of EVA foam and painted brown. And I used a heat gun to flex the craft foam to kind of lift it up on the edges to make it look awesome. And here you see I'm adding more detail to the costume. It's all made out of EVA foam. So back to the design that's on the leg print of her costume. I did the same process. I dipped my design into gray paint and I dapped it onto the navy blue spandex pieces that will go around my leg. Some extra pieces here that I made for the feet. The costume is starting to look pretty dope with all the pieces that I've added on so far. Now, time for the belt. I went and bought some pink fabric to glue onto the belt and I put everything together like this. Now the belt is looking exactly like the reference photo of the costume. I'm happy how this turned out. And I created a belt for this suit. And I added some last touches to the costume itself. I used gold thread to glue around my shoulders to give the costume more detail. The sire blades, I pretty much just spray painted them silver and I added some pink fabric around the handles. And this was the last part that I had to complete for my costume. Now I'm going to reveal to you guys what my costume turned out looking like. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial video.